Authorities have finally arrested a suspect for planting bombs in Washington, D.C. just one day before the January 6 riots. Who's the suspect and what drove him to allegedly plant the devices? I'll talk to the Post's chief Washington correspondent, Stephen Nelson. Plus, the FBI is leaning on its D.C. office to investigate the so-called Seditious Six, the group of Democratic lawmakers who urged members of the military to ignore illegal orders. Those stories and more today, Friday, December 5th. I'm Caitlin Becker, and this is the New York Postcast. The Navy admiral who controversially directed multiple strikes against a boat full of suspected drug runners back in September told lawmakers that after the initial strike, he believed the survivors were attempting to finish their mission, and so he ordered follow-up strikes to finish his mission. Admiral Frank Bradley spoke in a closed-door meeting with members of Congress Thursday. The meeting came amidst criticism that the double strike was inhumane and could constitute a war crime. Since the meeting wasn't public, we don't have all of the details, but Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton shared some of what went on, revealing that Bradley shared a video of the incident. Cotton says that he saw two survivors try to flip the boat over, quote, so they could stay in the fight. He also said they were told other narco-terrorists were in the area coming to the aid of the blasted boat. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth gave the initial order to destroy the boat, and according to the Wall Street Journal, Hegseth stopped watching surveillance video after the first strike. The survivors were discovered about an hour later, and so Bradley was the one left to decide if the survivors were, quote, out of the fight or not. Given the other narco traffic in the area, he deemed that they were indeed still in the fight, and so he ordered the additional hits. There's a rift growing at the FBI over how to proceed with the, quote, Seditious Six. Those are the 6 Democratic members of Congress who posted that video telling military service members to disobey illegal orders. FBI headquarters wants the D.C. field office to open a formal seditious conspiracy investigation. Remember, sedition is a crime punishable by death. So in this case, the death of senators and U.S. representatives. But leaders inside of the D.C. field office are telling the brass to slow their roll, claiming there is a, quote, lack of legal and factual basis to initiate a criminal case. Now, the FBI and the Justice Department have asked to interview the 6 lawmakers, all of whom were either in the military or part of the intelligence community before being elected. And I told you last week how the Pentagon promised to look into one of those legislators in particular, Mark Kelce, who, as a retired naval commander, is still subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So which side of the FBI will win? Well, Bloomberg Law, who first reported this story, says no decision has been made just yet, and the Post got no response from both the FBI HQ and the D.C. field office as of Thursday night. A University of Oklahoma student's failing Bible-based essay on gender norms created an absolute firestorm on campus. The assignment sparked a discrimination complaint, resulting in the suspension of the transgender grad student and instructor, and a win for the college junior. Samantha Fulnecky's professor, Mel Kurth, assigned the essay and then flunked Fulnecky because she wrote that, quote, belief in multiple genders was demonic. The student filed a complaint with the school, which just ruled that the failing grade will not have any impact on her overall course grade. Kurth, who uses she, they pronouns, had asked the class to write a 650-word response to an academic article that dealt with gender norms, popularity, and bullying. Fulnecky wrote that she was frustrated with the premise of the study because, based on her understanding of the Bible, she does not believe that there are more than 2 genders. Now, she initially received a 0 on the paper, which would have been 3% of the final grade in the class. Now, Kurth was put on administrative leave while the school investigated and will remain on leave until the end of the semester. The most talked about unsolved case surrounding the January 6 riots at the Capitol may finally have been solved. After nearly 5 years of evading detection, the man who allegedly planted pipe bombs outside both the Republican and Democratic National Committees on January 5th, 2021, has been taken into custody. 30-year-old Brian Cole Jr. of Virginia was arrested at his home about 25 miles south of the nation's capital on Thursday. Authorities believe Cole is the man that was caught on camera sneaking around D.C. the night before Joe Biden's 2020 election victory was certified by Congress, and thousands of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol in protest. The Post spoke to Cole's grandmother, who denied his involvement and said, quote, he's almost autistic-like because he doesn't understand a lot of stuff. I hope he is not not talking. So what else do we know about this suspect, and how, after 5 years, was he finally identified and captured? The Post's chief Washington correspondent Stephen Nelson has been covering this story, and he joins me now. Attorney General Pam Bondi said that the evidence in this case was just sitting around gathering dust. This seems like a pretty huge case, so why would it get shelved for so long?
The evidence that we've heard of so far is that the suspect purchased materials that are consistent with these IED devices in 2019 and 2020, and also that his license plate was recorded near the Capitol around the time, and additionally that his cell phone pinged towers in the area. So now this could be really good detective work that cracked the case, or it could be, a series of remarkable coincidences. It would appear that the investigators previously felt they didn't have enough, but now clearly the Justice Department feels like it does have enough to bring charges.
What do we know about Brian Cole Jr.? I mean, obviously this whole thing seems politically motivated, but have we learned anything more?
If it is politically motivated, we do not yet have the evidence of what that motive may be. Brian is 30 years old and he lives with his parents still in a Northern Virginia suburb. I actually was just out there today and I spoke to 3 of his neighbors who have known him for many years. If he does have a strong political leaning, they don't know. They say that he speaks very rarely. He's known for walking his pet chihuahua 2 times a day to the local 7-Eleven, which is a half mile from his house. And they say that, if you say hello to him, maybe you'll get a one-word hello back, but often he doesn't make eye contact. He isn't very social. He wears his headphones. And he is autistic, 2 of his neighbors believe, and that's something that members of his family have said as well.
I'm curious to see how that's going to impact the charges or how this case shakes out. We know that has been brought up in different court cases, the most recently one being Brian Kohberger's case. So it does seem, based on, at least you were the one actually speaking to some of these people, that the suspect in question isn't as high functioning as you might expect for someone who's accused of what seems like a pretty serious and complex case.
Well, it's hard to assess someone's intelligence. It's possible he's just shy or quiet. But some of the neighbors, of course, have dealt with people who have autism, and they said that it seemed consistent with their personal experience with other people who have the condition. He, previously he was the talk of the neighborhood for a very different reason. Apparently, throughout the winter, he wears shorts and red Crocs. And so before he was arrested today, shocking everyone, they knew him as the guy who would walk around wearing shorts when it was 20 degrees out. But the neighbors, as I said, they don't know if he has a political motive. One of the 3 I spoke to said, it's really confusing to him why bombs would be planted at both the Republican and the Democratic headquarters, and said, well, there were a lot of nuts at the Capitol on January 6th. Maybe he just felt like participating. But that bit of the puzzle is really not resolved yet, why he would have done this. And some of the neighbors think maybe the FBI has the wrong guy. The 2 of them said that he has unusually short legs, and that, they've seen the video of the suspect, and, they're not quite sure if that actually matches. And they think that that's something that should be looked into, confirming that he is the proper stature and gait of the person that was recorded with these weapons.
So, Stephen, what comes next in the case and in the investigation?
Well, the court process will play itself out. Right now, we have only very preliminary court filings. The Justice Department leadership hasn't made a whole lot of remarks on this. This case was subject to conspiracy theories for the past 5 years. And it's unclear yet if there's enough evidence there to really lock down the culprit here and convict him. The Trump administration officials, though, clearly feel confident enough to make an arrest, and they feel that they got the guy.
Stephen Nelson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Vanity Fair journalist Olivia Nuzzi's book about her affair with RFK Jr. is out. for all the world to see, but that doesn't mean we're done with new bombshells from the fallen from grace newswoman. I told you about how her ex-fiance and fellow journalist Ryan Lizzo was going full on scorched earth and trying to get his piece of her media spotlight by airing even more dirty laundry. Well, his latest revelation is a note he says he found in March of 2020 that proves RFK Jr. was not Newsy's only illicit paramour. The rumor mill has been churning for a while, suggesting that Newsy also had some sort of thing with former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford. Her lawyer recently told the New York Times that in her book, Newsy, quote, discusses the only instances in her long career as a journalist in which she had an improper relationship with someone she was covering. For starters, she has covered Mark Sanford. And the note Liza found and has now gone public about, it was an incomplete handwritten letter that read, quote, Mark, I am sorry. I can't say that I wish I hadn't touched you, hadn't. And then she doesn't finish the sentence. Okay, not exactly a smoking gun, but still gross. Blech. Liza adds that this note was one of 3 drafts that he found. He explains, quote, Olivia insisted that she and Mark only had sex one time on the night of February 24th, 2020. Drafts? We needed drafts for that? And who remembers those kinds of specific dates? Finally today, from our friends at Page Six, save the date! Taylor and Travis have told the world when they're going to tie the knot, and it is the most Taylor Swiftiest Swiftie date ever. June 13th, 2026. Even casual fans know that 13 is Taylor's lucky number. So duh, of course she's getting married on the 13th day of the month. If only there was a 13th month. Now, the real Swifties know that there are always more layers to Miss Swift's Easter eggs. When you write out the date 6, 13, 26, and you add it all up, the individual numbers get to 18. Add the 1 and the 8 and you get 9. In numerology, 9 represents the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new one. Do you see what she's doing here? But that is not all the tea I have to spill today. No. Page Six is told that Miss Swift cut a hefty check in order to snag another bride's wedding date at a posh Rhode Island venue called Ocean House. It's in the same town as her mansion, Watch Hill, and honestly, it is stunning. And you may scoff at that move, but there are no losers in this equation. Taylor and Travis obviously get their dream wedding on their dream date at their dream venue, and some anonymous bride not only has one hell of a story to tell, but she can probably now afford an even nicer wedding, a house, 2 college tuitions, God only knows what else with her Swiftie riches. Okay, I'll admit the numerology thing feels a bit like a stretch to me, but have at it, Swifties. And I gotta know, what do you guys think of the move to pay off another bride for their venue and date? If it were me, I would have driven a hard bargain, obviously more than the cost of the wedding. And the kicker, I would have demanded an invite for Taylor Swift's special day. Oh, I would have been there with bells on. I would probably also ask Miss Swift the same thing I ask of you, for her to also like and follow the New York Postcast wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Have a great weekend, people.